And so I do think you got to think like an agent to also help create and build agents, and that's a skill set that you want to train into your teams.
It's absolutely critical. I believe it's one of the biggest determinants of success in an enterprise world will be how ready is your workforce to use these AI tools and this technology.
These are new tools, and the people who learn how to use these tools effectively will be able to outcompete the people who don't. And this will apply to companies, to teams, to individuals.
Really looking forward to diving in. Thank you so much for joining me here today. Let's start the conversation by examining the enterprise as a whole. Mike and Anahita, a question for both of you. Will 2026 be the year of agents becoming like virtual coworkers alongside every employee? And what will that actually look like? Mike, why don't we start with you?
I mean, I think they will. I don't think they're going to completely replace coworkers. I think lots of big change in technology happens in small pieces, and so I think they will be assistants. I would describe more as that in 26 anyway than I would a coworker, right? So there'll be things that they're capable of, and you can harness multiple of them and send them off and do tasks for you, much like you would do coworkers. But I do think there will be some specialty, and they will be good at certain things and not good at others, and so that's probably true of humans as well. But I tend to see them at least next year as sort of a subset of a coworker or pieces and parts that you can put together.
Thank you, Mike. And Anahita, from your seat.
Yeah, I mean, I would build on what Mike said. And yes, I agree that agents will become truly the co-workers. And what that means in practice is, one, access to information and technology becomes available to everyone. I'll give you an example. We have at Snowflake internally built a GTM AI assistant, which gives access to our entire GTM organization, go-to-market organization, access to all their training material, their structured financial use case data, etc. Whereas previously they could only get this information by going into an already built dashboard or having to ask an analyst to pull that data for them. Now they can go and with a natural language ask these questions of an agent. So access to that information becomes much more readily available. What that means for human coworkers is that they have to now think about different sort of skill sets that becomes important in this age of AI. As an example, judgment and creativity becomes very important. What to ask these AI agents to focus on? How do you measure the quality of this? How do you decide what to automate and what not to automate? So they will be coworkers. I don't believe they will be replacing the humans, but the work will be different that the humans versus AI will do.
Great perspectives. Thank you, Anahita and Mike, and great to hear from the enterprise as a whole. And Chris, it's wonderful to have you join this conversation as well. And I want to explore specifically the function of the data engineer. As AI adoption increases, data engineers are taking on more strategic roles within the business to ensure AI's success. And at the same time, enterprises' heightened focus on AI has increased data engineers' workload. How will agents serve to supercharge their output and impact?
Yeah, so I think what we're seeing, and you hit on it exactly correctly, is AI is causing a massive increase in the amount of data that data teams are having to process. It's both causing a big increase in the types of data that you want to bring in. It's increasing the types of data you can access, like making unstructured data and documents and text a lot more usable. But it's also increasing, as these agents get built, it's increasing the number of consumers of the data as well. And so we're seeing data engineering teams really get squeezed between this. They're being asked to build significantly more pipelines running on significantly more data without actually the teams getting any bigger. And so AI has to play a role in increasing the efficiency and the effectiveness of data engineering teams as well. That will be partly by deploying and running agents. It'll also be through coding agents and things like Cursor and Claude Code and Cortex Code, which is our product. We're going to have to see them, as Mike and Anahita both put it, become more effective and more efficient themselves, but also then start outsourcing the work that doesn't require that human touch and that human judgment to those agents as well. Doing some simple updates to your pipelines, building sort of simple transformations. These are things that agents are going to be able to pick up, and that will allow the data engineers to kind of elevate and operate at a higher level.
Thank you for that, and well said, Chris. And now I want to open things up and very much turn this into more of a round robin conversation, because it's clear that regardless of one's role, it's imperative that they're able to see how their function and responsibilities fit into the bigger picture of AI disruption. How do you three collectively see this mentality evolving in the year ahead, and what steps should everyone be taking now in order to best position themselves for success in the AI era? Anahita, would love your perspective from a vision and AI value perspective.
Yeah, it's actually interesting. Chris touched a little bit here at the data engineering personas and how those roles have shifted. And I can talk a little bit more broadly how more broadly the data personas jobs have changed. And it used to be that a lot of the value that data professionals would bring to the table were their ability to run Python scripts, SQL scripts. Now, with the advancements in the coding agents such as Cursor or even our own Cortex code, none of that is as necessary anymore. And so, but what has become necessary in exchange for that is these data professionals now need to better translate business requirements to BRDs and PRDs for these AI agents to be able to ingest and act on. They need to spend more time building very strong data foundations with the right semantic layer and the right definitions that these AI agents can access. It has created very important value for analytics engineering and data engineering as a very important function that has increased its prominence, if you need, as a result of preparing data for your AI agents. And it is also important that we put in the right evaluation framework in deciding what is actually automatable. How do you measure the quality of that automation versus what do you not automate, and still use human in the loop, if you will, for those validations. So the jobs have certainly evolved. It hasn't reduced, as Chris said, but it has certainly changed in shape and has moved more from purely coding to more thinking high level about the business problems and translating that as requirements for these AI agents.
Great to hear. Thank you, Anahita. And Mike, from your perspective, from a larger leadership perspective and IT lens, would love your thoughts.
Yeah, I think when you think about enterprise technology, the skill change is going to come across all of product engineering everywhere, really, to think like an agent. Because if you a lot of times in enterprise tech, someone's going to file a ticket and say, I need this thing, or I want to buy this software, or build this dashboard, or these set of screens. And what I'm trying to do is move the team away from that into solutions. And when you think about solutions, you're not just trying to solve what they asked for. You're trying to solve for the future, right? And so you want to build what they need, not necessarily what they want. And I think that's very different. And when you break it apart from an AI perspective, you need to say, well, what you described to me on a whiteboard is 6 different screens. What if I can give that to you just in English language, right? And what if I can answer way more questions than you originally asked? Let's set some boundaries that solve what you want, but make it broader as well. And so I do think you got to think like an agent to also help create and build agents. And that's a skill set that you want to train into your teams.
Well said, Mike. And Chris, for the tech roles for the audience watching.
So I would echo what Anahita said. I think what's happening is, as the deeply technical boilerplate type work that makes up a huge amount of what happens in data teams today, as that becomes automatable, the people who are very good at building the boilerplate code, those jobs or that skill set becomes a lot less important and valuable because we can start to automate it. What becomes even more valuable, though, are the people who can understand, as Mike was saying, who can understand the business needs and the business problem, and who understand the context. And that means both they can instruct the agents on what they need. They can also double check the outputs and make sure that it actually makes sense, what insights are coming out and what you're learning. And also that they can communicate with the business users, who are ultimately the consumers of everything that we're kind of building with data. And so I think that skill set of being able to elevate and think about what is the business trying to do, what are the outcomes that we're trying to drive, and how is the technology, which now includes AI and agents, how's the technology going to help us accomplish that? That skill set is going to become even more important.
Great to hear, and I'm so glad you mentioned skill set, because now I want to pivot slightly and focus on up-leveling of employees. Question for the three of you: how pivotal will it be to continue to train and guide employees across both technical and non-technical teams in these early innings for an agent-enabled workforce, and what should that guidance or enablement look like? Anahita, why don't we start with you?
Yeah, it is absolutely critical. I believe it's one of the biggest determinants of success in an enterprise world will be how ready is your workforce to use these AI tools and this technology. And so what that means is, one is how do you give them the practical skill sets? How do you invest the time and invest the trainings to prepare your workforce? The second one is, as a leader, how do you build yourself? How do you roll up your own sleeves and learn the technology so you can guide your team in the right way? And then the last one is, how do you build the right culture that encourages experimentation, encourages risk-taking, and ability to work with this new technology and be okay with not fully knowing something yet, and just trying these new technologies versus all the stuff that you're comfortable with in the past.
I love that very much, staying curious. And Mike, from your seat?
Yeah, I think too much of software development in the past was really industrialized. You built a PRD, you spent hours and hours with your business team, and I think you can start by just speaking English with AI, right? And you can much quicker build proof of concepts, trial and error in smaller pieces. And I still think you want the software development fundamentals, but I think you come at it from a different perspective. And so I think if you think that that's true, and I certainly do, part of this is cultural change. We've spent the last 50 years teaching engineers zeros and ones and logic in very cryptic languages. And now we're having to say, no, go back and just speak your native tongue and let the system react, right? And so sounds simple, but it is amazing. I've been in so many conversations. Every week there's a conversation where a group will start talking about a problem, and the finance team will say, well, we'll get a couple analysts in, we'll create some spreadsheets. And I just stop and say, well, let me just go ask our sales agent what it thinks, right? And that little behavioral change is so important. And I think it's going to be harder to change early than people think.
Great insights and perspective. And Chris, what are you saying?
I mean, I think you guys have said a lot of it. It's really about making sure that people are thinking about the business problems that they're trying to solve and asking, why are we doing this? What's the outcome that we're trying to drive? And then thinking about, how to translate that into these AI tools. I do think it is the playing with things, as you said, Anahita, that's the most important. Of try them out. When you have a new interesting problem, go see if you can solve it yourself with one of these new tools first, before you go back to the old ways of doing it. Even if you're pretty confident, this will take me an hour to do it myself, go see if you can do it faster than that with AI, or even in the same amount of time. And the other piece, which fits with your cultural point, Anahita, is make sure that you're sharing the things that you're doing. I've learned a tremendous amount about how to use AI by hearing what other people within the company are doing when they share how they tackled a particular problem, or how they built a particular thing. Learning from within the company, learning from other companies has given me a ton of ideas to then go kick around and try. And I think that's helped us try to make sure that we're adopting this in the right ways.
Great perspective. Thank you for that, Chris. And I realize that we've covered a lot in this conversation, but to wrap, a question for all three of you. For almost 2 years, there's been the discussion that AI will eliminate jobs, but it will also enhance or even create other jobs. As agentic AI is rolled out, how do you handle that human aspect of change management to help people see the opportunities that AI presents, rather than being afraid of what it means for the future of their roles?
So there was a quote that I heard earlier that I'm going to forget exactly where it came from, but about you should be less worried about losing your job to AI and more worried about losing your job to a person using AI. And I think that's like a really
spot
good
on
way to think about it. To me, I think it really is. These are new tools, and the people who learn how to use these tools effectively will be able to outcompete the people who don't. And this will apply to companies, to teams, to individuals. I think even within a company that's not at the forefront of adopting AI, the individuals who figure out how to do it are going to be the ones who rise to the top because they're able to get more done. There were stories when I first joined a consulting firm right out of college. The internet had come into that industry not that far before I got there, and there had been a period where the people who graduated from college and knew about doing research on the internet came in, and they were able to accomplish tasks that used to take a month, and they could do it in like 3 days.
Wow.
And the senior people in the company didn't know this. And so there was, I think they called it like a 2-year golden period, where the people who knew about using the internet were able to just, they would get stuff done in a couple of days, and then they would basically take a break for a week, and because their productivity was so high. And then they started all getting promoted because they were so fast and efficient. And then the golden period ended because then they started to expect that of all the people working for them. I think we'll go through a similar thing, maybe not quite as dramatic as that, but I think it really is about the people who spend the time learning how to use the tools and experiment and figure out what to do will be the ones who become the leaders going forward.
Well said, Chris. And Mike, from your seat.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I'm not sure there's a whole lot to add to what Chris just said. I do think, I think it's a cultural change. I think it starts there. And then that leads to sort of behavioral change. And, you know, I do think, you know, some great tenets of a good leader is to ask great questions and listen. Well, asking great questions is really what AI requires today, right? And asking any question. So I think listening well to your business users and using the tools and asking great questions of the tools and sort of seeing where it takes you from there. And, you know, being knowledgeable about what's out in the market and available. It's changing so fast. And what's great one day will be surpassed the next. And so I think just staying up with the technology and then culturally changing yourself to start to use it and be the first place you go in the morning versus, you know, going to your Jira board or going to your old dashboard that you went to. But thinking about AI tools, first thing you touch in the morning will be a good way to start that cultural change.
Sounds like a great morning routine. Thank you, Mike and Anahita.
Yeah, I can't agree more with what both Chris and Mike said. I think there is certainly a lot of fear about job replacement, but as Chris said, I think the job won't be replaced by AI. It will be replaced by humans who know how to use AI. And so building that culture of, again, supporting your employees in learning to work with these AI tools, using it as a leader yourself, rolling up your sleeves and helping with that will be helpful. The other things that will be helpful in my mind is like one is transparency with the employees, right? Like being honest about the fact that yes, the jobs are changing. I did give an example of the jobs of data personas changing. That doesn't mean it's going away. It's just shaping. It's changing its shape, right? You no longer have to focus too much about coding, but you still have to focus on building the right foundation, building the right business requirements for these AI agents. So providing that honesty and transparency with employees will help. The other one is celebrating small wins, right? When someone uses an AI tool and can do something more productively, share this, celebrate it, share it with others in the organization. It creates the culture of experimenting and rewarding experimentation, but it also shares, as Chris said, you can learn from your colleagues how to best use AI. And then, as I mentioned before, continue to invest in upskilling and providing that space and trainings to your employees. And really the culture that you're trying to build is moving from that fear of AI to embracing AI. And so doing these things is how you will get there.
I can't think of a better way to end this segment. Thank you so much for joining me. It's safe to say 2026 will be an exciting year. Thank you again for joining me here today.
Thank you, Ryan.